Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me say that I'm very honored to be the third in a row of these distinguished speakers. It's a great thing, but I'm even more happy to be here with you in person instead of being in this uncomfortable position of talking online from somewhere, not hearing, not seeing you. So I'm very happy to be here. And I hope that actually, beside giving this small speech now, I will also have the chance in this 1.5 days to talk a lot in person with you, because this 15 minutes that I got is not too much, but I hope that I will also be able to point out some very practical issues about the implementation of the youth work agenda, because now you got an insight from Antje and Jakob about some larger scale initiatives, and I will try to go a bit more into the details. So, just to start with, also to introduce myself, because Antje and Jakob, they both refer to the fact that I'm a new colleague in the partnership. So I would like to tell a bit about my role and also about the partnership, what it does. Can we go on? First of all, I'm a new colleague in the partnership, so I started like a month ago, and I'm mostly responsible for the implementation of the youth work agenda. On the other hand, I have also worked a lot for the Council of Europe before. I have been an education advisor for 5 years in the youth center in Budapest, and I have been in the youth field for like 20 years now. So actually I'm not new in that sense to the youth work field, and I'm very happy to work on this topic now. And what the partnership is doing. So the role of the partnership is basically to foster synergies between the work of the two institutions, the Commission, the European Commission, and the Council of Europe, and to support their initiatives from the background somehow in the fields of youth policy, youth research, and youth work. And that's where we come to the implementation of the youth work agenda. One of our most important aims for the upcoming 2 years in our program now is to support the implementation of the European youth work agenda. And how we support is mostly with coordination, as Jakob was pointing out, with conducting research, and that's why we also cooperated with Marco in the last few weeks on preparing for this very event, to be present in different events, to present what we are doing, coordinate with the work of the steering group that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes, and also publications, preparing different preparing some background knowledge, and so on. But I will also tell a bit more about that in a few seconds. So we can go to the next one. Okay. So as I mentioned, and I think also the colleagues mentioned a few times, we have this so-called steering group on the implementation of the youth work agenda set up, and it had its first meeting recently in March, and we use this occasion to collect some information and some input from the representatives. But also it's maybe important for you to understand who are there. I heard that it's still a question for many people in the field. Basically, it's not a big group of people, it's really a small team of knowledgeable experts and representatives of institutions. So of course we have the European Commission present, the Council of Europe in the steering group, ERICA and Eurodesk, and we also have academics, universities, youth workers associations represented, and the partnership itself. And the process will continue this year with more online and offline meetings. And basically the aim of these meetings is to coordinate different efforts, to collect information, and to also give inspiration for the steering group members how to move on with the implementation. And we also expect the members of the steering group to regularly help the partnership actually to give us some guidance on how to conduct research, how to move on with the different items in our work plan. So basically it's a very mutual support between the partnership and the steering group, so that we can move on together in the implementation process. And I will also tell a few words about what were the outcomes of this survey that we did together with the steering group members. It's not a very representative information, it's just a few hints from here or there from Europe, but I hope that it will be still somehow interesting for you to see what is happening, what has been happening so far. If you go to the next slide, we can continue to explore what we found out through this survey. No, it's not the previous one, sorry. So, and also just before I start talking about the outcomes, I would point out that, of course, when thinking about how to collect this information, we had a structured approach, and we mainly followed the objectives of the Bonn process, and we tried to collect information regarding each of these areas or each of these objectives from the partners in the steering group. So we were trying to find out what is happening in the field of youth policy, in building strategic frameworks, in cooperation, going to a common direction. Is there any innovative initiative in the field in the European level? Are there some initiatives on developing the provision of youth work services, recognition, quality, and so on? So that's what we tried to more or less cover through this small questionnaire that we had together with the steering group members. And maybe just to give you some image of what we managed to cover and what we learned is that this chart is meant to represent that to what extent the different areas are covered by the different initiatives as for now. And what we found out that there are quite a number of initiatives on quality and on recognition, so developing quality and the recognition of youth work, and also basically here the common direction and the strategic framework, they somehow go hand in hand. So I think there are many initiatives together in these two areas as well, and maybe a bit less initiatives on the other fields. And yeah, just to give an overview, and also I was trying to reflect on all the initiatives that I learned through this survey. What I was able to identify that there is a very strong emphasis on building the strategic frameworks and to define a common direction, and I think it's mostly thanks to the efforts of the institutions involved, and also Jugend for Europa. Also, there are quite a number of researches done, mapping studies all over Europe. I think that's also a rather strong area. And also there are many initiatives on improving quality of youth work all over Europe. Just a few examples that we learned about is the International Youth Work Traders Guild, which is a longer story, I think, but it still fits into this agenda. The developing quality standards for youth centers, the European Academy on Youth Work that is going to happen very soon, the European training strategy, and so on. So I think in that sense we are quite advanced. Also, there are different initiatives all over Europe, even if they can be different in different member states and countries, on education of youth workers, also in the academia, but also within the Erasmus Plus program. I think also Barbara yesterday was referring to the snacks that are run by the national agencies. For example, the one on digital youth work was mentioned in this case. It's a kind of a strategic cooperation between the national agencies. And there are also considerable efforts in enhancing recognition in general, and I think here we can point out the work of Eurodesk and Erika. On the other hand, what I see based on what we found out through the survey is that is a bit less emphasis on provision of youth work, developing provision of youth work, on innovation and cross-sectorial cooperation or engagement with other sectors. I hope that you are still here with me. I know that it's sometimes a bit difficult after all these speeches, and it's also not the most comfortable to give this huge amount of information in a frontal way, but I think also after the speech we can still talk about it, and also in person if you have questions. I wanted to also talk a bit separately about the strategic framework, because I think it's really a strong area, and I think it's relevant for all of us. And here I see three main areas of efforts. One is the Council of Europe, that with the partnership set up the steering group of what I was telling about, but also there is another steering group that Antje was mentioning that will work specifically in cooperation with the statutory bodies of the Council of Europe. on the topic of youth work. They also work a lot on the quality label of youth centers, which is, I think, a very interesting project, and it should be also scaled up, most probably. Then the European Commission has set up the subgroup. I think Jakob also mentioned this one, and they will be working on this new European platform on youth work online. And of course, there is a whole Erasmus Plus program there with the work of the SALTOs and the national agencies. And I think the Jugend für Europa plays a very important role here. I think we, of course, with the partnership, we are already cooperating with them, and I think their role in supporting the Bonn process is really essential, and I think it will be essential in the near future still. I think Barbara mentioned also a few things yesterday, including the website development and so on, and also of organizing meetings like this offline or online is very important. Yeah, I also have some highlights, but I don't. These are some very concrete examples that I learned through this survey that we did, and without really reading out all the points, they partly focus on recognition. So it's also a stronger area, I would say, where things are happening. These are some efforts by Erika and Eurodesk, but also, for example, the first one is about the recognition of youth work as a profession on the European level through the ESCO, this multilingual classification of skills and competencies. And also there are some other areas which I think they connect more to education of youth workers, to measuring their competencies, and also developing guidelines for developing the formal education of youth workers. But I guess that these two areas are also a lot interconnected. So I mean, of course, also investing into the education of youth worker will help the recognition, and I think it's two very interconnected areas, and I think it's very important to also go into that direction at the European level. Then it's just a question, of course, how it can be how it can be a joint effort on the European level, or how much it is doomed to be somehow getting stuck on the national level and have a big patchwork of different recognition models and so on. Yeah, I think that I would go on, and yeah, just a few examples. I don't know how much you are familiar with the work of the partnership, but I wanted also to point out a few things that we are doing or we are going to do in our work. Many of these things are not projects that we are only doing regarding youth work, but for example, in the series of our knowledge books, we have a specific publication on education of youth workers. And also on our website, we are developing so-called visible value library on the recognition of youth work. So it's a lot of materials collected there. Also, we are trying to work on the educational part of the whole youth work field through our massive online open courses. So we will also work again on a second edition of our MOOC on essentials of youth work very soon this year. So it will be an online opportunity for youth workers all over Europe to learn and to develop their competencies. We also have another series of books which is on the history of youth work, which is I think looking from the very practical point of view of youth work is maybe not what we usually deal with when we work with young people, but I think it's still important when looking back to the past to see what has happened, and that youth work really has a long history. So we have this 7 volumes of books covering the history of youth work in Europe, and hopefully these kind of publications can also contribute to the education of youth workers all over Europe for the future. Also, there is another youth knowledge book, Thinking Seriously About Youth Work, that is related to this area. And we do some analytical youth work, we do some analytical work on digital youth work, which is becoming, of course, essential nowadays. And we will also run some, and we have run some studies on regional level on youth work initiatives also in especially Eastern Europe and in the Balkans, in the Western Balkans. But please also check out our webpage. There is a lot to find there, and also maybe it's good that you know that we also have publications printed normally, and we are very happy to provide you and your colleagues with printed publications, so we can be always contacted, and we can send boxes of publications if you are interested in that. Good, and also some key future steps, so there is also something to tell you that might inspire you to be involved in the future with our work. This year we will be setting up a new pool of youth work experts. And in the partnership, normally we work with pools of experts in research, but also now we think that it's a time to set up a specific pool of youth work experts, also to support the implementation of the youth work agenda through their expertise. So it's something that is coming up. Then we will be also running different studies and mapping initiatives related to further explore what is happening in the youth field, what is this so-called youth work ecosystem, and where we are now. And that's a serious and longer-term research project for us. And there will be also a specific study dedicated to the recognition of youth worker skills and competencies. So it's again a lot of research work which goes in the background, but we hope that this can be somehow channeled into the work of yours and also the whole youth work community in the upcoming years. And then it's when it comes to 2023, I think yesterday it was already mentioned that we will organize a big European Community of Practice meeting. It's a kind of a midpoint between the two conventions, and yeah, you will be all informed, of course, when we know more about it, but it's still next year, so it's somewhere in the very early planning phase. And also, as Antje was telling, we will work a lot on the review of the implementation of their youth work recommendation, which is also work to start now. And yeah, maybe just some concluding questions before your questions, before Marco's presentation. I was using this reference to the puzzles in my presentation also before, if you noticed. For when I was preparing for the presentation, I really had the feeling that what is happening now on the European level is a huge puzzle game where everybody is putting in small pieces here or there, and I think it's very valuable. It's developing a lot. There are a lot of new and very colorful puzzle pieces being put in their place. But at the same time, I don't know where is it going at this moment. So it was really just to have a quick look now and present it to you where we are now, more or less. It's a question for me how to, or maybe also for you, it's a question that how it can become a complete picture that has an image that somehow can represent the diversity of youth work all over Europe. Maybe we have to acknowledge that it's a work in progress now, and I think it's also good to have it in mind throughout this meeting that it is a work in progress. Also, having COVID behind us, things have not been moving most probably as they were supposed to move, but I think we are in this very good moment to move on and to invest a lot more into this work. It's also a question if we know enough about ourselves, about our work on the European level. Does the community of practice know about what we are doing or not? And that's where actually it becomes important to work a lot on research and to try to gather knowledge so that we have a clearer picture. It's a lot of investment on the researcher side and the institutional side, but I think it has to be also an investment on your side or on the practitioner side to learn and to use this knowledge that is being gathered. So I think that's where I would also pass the floor to Marco, because he also worked a lot on this study that we planned together. And thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope to continue the conversation in the upcoming 2 days. I hope it was not too overwhelming, but I'm very happy to clarify any details while we are here together. Thank you.